와비딜러인데요. 러인데요. 와비딜러인데요. 러인데요. 와비딜러인데요. 후레우 레요. 와비딜러인데요. 와비딜러인데요. 후레우 레요. 와비딜러 에요요 둘레 에요요요 둘레 에요요요 둘레 에요요요 둘레 와비딜러인가.
Hello, my friends. How are you this morning? My two favorite people are here. I love you guys, honestly. I was just thinking about us since we do just have a moment. I was remembering that time I did that experiment where I wanted to see who out of all my friends would sit and listen to an audiobook with me and just hang out. And you guys did. And that was super rad. And we had so much fun, didn't we? So there you go. There's something to do on the holidays. That was interesting. Anyway, okay, so I woke up this morning. I had some stuff sitting on my watch me, And I finally got to something that kind of blew my mind away. So I'm going to share that while it's fresh. I have to change my screen. I came across, there's these greats that we have, right? And I'm going to say Freud, and they have lots of ideas. But like Einstein, not all of them are really, they're just kind of like, hey, here's an idea. This might be possible. And then it's not till later that more and more start to unlock these understandings. So that's where I got started at. So the human condition that makes us let me go over here, because I started it. Okay. The death drive is what it's called. And so what is it in the human being that not pushes us towards life, but pushes us towards death? And this complete opposite concept of not moving, necessarily. So I'll read about it because I thought it was really interesting. And to me, I can see its place. I'm not saying that it's right either, but I get it within the theory, meaning of life theory. So I thought it was really interesting to kind of explore. So I present to you my current state of thoughts. And also need to move this over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this. Can I share this and just move it over there? Copy. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to pull this over here because I can't play the video. They really make me mad because I am trying to share things. I'm not out. I don't give a crap. You're saying interesting things, okay? But you won't let me share it for some odd reason. It's fine. I'll find other ways around your dumbness, okay? Your rudeness. And so this is what I've come up with after I watched this ad. Fuck you, Activia. Oh, wait, now I've got some kind of Flatatron school. What the fuck is a Flatatron? Get the fuck out of here. Okay. So I can bring up, it's one of those, I'll show you the channel. I'm sure I'm allowed to do that at least. Okay. Okay. But here's the channel. It was just, who knows why I find the things I do. Okay. They're usually either suggested to me based off of my algorithms, or something makes me think of it and I go Google it in, and then I want to watch some quick little thing while I'm crocheting to decide if it's worth looking at. So I end up with this little list of God knows what kind of crazy things I've thought of over the day. And then these stack up. And so it just pop. I never know. Okay. So I can't even tell you where this thought may have come from, whatever. But it's not that old, and I'm not subscribed. So deduction tells me that it was probably something that was suggested to me. And because it clickbaited me, I clicked. This is clearly, if you were to ask me, a channel that is a GPT bot that pulls up random things and then makes a little book report about it, and then they put it on a channel because everyone like me will click and watch their stupid fucking ads to learn about, Freud, something that I'm not a philosopher. I didn't go to university, so I know these names, but I only know them as I come back into contact with them, as I come to rediscover them. I know them. I know Freud about behaviors. I'm just now learning about some of the other bizarre things that he's thought of course. Why, I can't read everything he does and everything this other guy. Look, this is how we learn. So I don't have that basic understanding. So I'm learning. Well, this was very interesting to me. This concept of almost a flipping of what we have come to know. So anyway, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to show the transcript. I'm going to read it. Oh, where is the transcript? There it is. Okay. And because, I don't know. I'm assuming I can show the transcript. Let's check it. We'll do a test. If I get grounded for 2 weeks, you know that I got hit with the second copyright. Hello, freedom awaits, and Nomadic Brit is in the house. What? Okay, I'm just being silly. All right, so back to serious business. Because I really love when I can read it. So that's actually very important to me when I'm sharing things, is to share it as I'm also reading, because I'm one that, I think that's an important trick on the mind. I can get the mind to remember if I do the following things. You have to say it, hear it, repeat it, right? So one of the best ways to learn something is to read out loud. You're reading it, you're seeing it, you're saying it, and you're hearing it. You're doing all three of these things when you're reading aloud. So as dumb as you might sound to anyone else, reading your textbooks out loud, reading your research out loud, even if it's just in a whisper tone, helps you retain the knowledge. So it adds to the 3 things that are necessary. So that's why I like to add this. Okay. So, and I'm not going to be able to say these names right. I'm just going to give you that. But this is clearly a chat GPT book report that's been given to me. So he's talking about Daedalus, the master craftsman and architect of the labyrinth of Crete, once created wings made of feathers and wax that would help him and his son Icarus escape their imprisonment. I told you, I know how to say, I hear it in my head, but it just doesn't come out my mouth. Right. So just don't make fun of me for it. Grow up. Before they attempted to escape, Daedalus warned Icarus, there it is, against flying too close to the sun or the sea, as the sea's dampness would clog the wings and the sun's heat would melt them. But Icarus ignored his father's caution and flew higher towards the sun. As he came closer, the heat melted the wax and kept his wings together. And unable to maintain his wings as the feathers came loose, Icarus, I already forgot it. Icarus, is it? Fuck. He began to fall and plunged into the sea below and perished. Hence, the Icarian Sea got its name. Is that right? There are different reasons and interpretations. And while Icarus, that's it, decided to fly too close to the sun, some say youthful impulsiveness made him feel invincible and prone to risk taking. Now we're going to dive into that, feeling invincible and prone to risk taking, because you know that I love that topic. And we're going to go back and revisit it again and learn a little bit more about ourselves. And others claim it was the allure of danger and the seeking of thrill, which we're going to dive into. So these 2 conflicting thoughts of the story of Icarus flying too close to the sun, and what this is a representation of. So could there be a darker, more disturbing reason behind his actions? Well, this is what people theologians sit back and think about. They digest these myths and think, what is it telling me? And then, but then on the other side, where it seems like the majority of everyone else hangs out, breaks them apart for their shapes and is forgetting the story, the moral, the real value that is over here in the myth. We're so focused, and we're going to talk about that as well. What is the, I've been really deep researching into why, where through our historical timeline did we absolutely fall into the religion, E.T. pit from Atari. That's where we're at. We can't fucking climb out. And that's because there's a glitch in the program there that you're unaware of. And that's why you're forever fucking stuck in that stupid pit and you can't get out. And you're going to drop kick this fucking Atari across the room because no one's told you the game is fucked up. And it's not your abilities. It's not your fault. It's the game's fault, and they tricked you. And your parents suck for getting you that stupid game for Christmas when all you really wanted was an E.T. doll, just the little tiny doll that was so cute, that looked like leather. And my cousin Penny had one. And fuck, she always had cool shit. And I wanted the E.T. doll, and what do I get? The fucking Atari and E.T. the game, because my mom wanted Pac-Man, because that's how she is. And so she goes, well, I can get Pac-Man and then I'll give her E.T. This was also, I was 6. This was also turning 7. This was also the year that I recognized that if I put a very limited amount of items on my Christmas list, I had a better chance of getting at least one thing I super duper wanted. If I hid those 2 things that I wanted really, really bad within a list of 100 things, that left my mom a lot of options. So if I kept my list really small, like 10 items, I was guaranteed to get at least one of those 10 items, right? I was going to work within the system that was given to me. And so my mom liked having the ability to choose my toys. And the more options I gave her, the more of the things that she would like off that list she would get, compared to the things that I really liked. And then maybe she would like. So I limited it. That was a very important year of Christmas, understanding how to manipulate and yet be manipulated, because as that 10 list had an E.T. doll on it, I believe it was even like number 1 or 2 on the list. I want to say, I think it was number 2. She didn't even get me that. She got me the video game. But the point is that it is an excellent metaphor and an excellent example to show how you can, unbeknownst to yourself or the people in your social circle, as to why you can't get out of that pit of thinking, until someone comes along and says, well, that was the game. It was rigged from the start. It was never your fault. Oh, and then suddenly your whole understanding about the world and why you hate video games and can't figure out why everyone else likes them comes to an enlightenment moment. And you go, that's because I recognized the game was rigged from the start. And now you have Joanie sharing you ideas of where we've been rigged from the start. And in the Illuminati world, or magic world, or Freemasonry, or business, that's called stacking the deck. It's a term for getting ahead of you. It's why they use the game chess, because it's many advanced thinkings. Okay. Back to my original thought. Thanks for sticking with me, both of you. whoever is bothering to stay. Hey, PDF is here and Matrix is here and Pneumatic's still here. Okay. So whoever is still here. The Austrian neurologist and founder of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, believed that humans are subject to two opposing drives. The first is the life drive, also known as Eros, which you'll see a lot of in the symbolisms, especially when we're talking about Egyptian symbolisms. So a lot of people should see these words when researching the new movements coming in. And the second one is death drive, or later called Thanatos. Although Freud admitted that the concept was speculative, so like I said, he wasn't quite sure, he just thought about it, and these were his thoughts. The death drive becomes essential to his later theoretical framework. And this is where it becomes very essential to my, which is much later, theoretical framework. The death drive points to the irrational, self-destructive tendencies within human behavior. It supposedly motivates us to repeat traumatic experiences, engage in conduct that leads to demise, or cause violence outwardly towards other beings. It supposedly motivates us to repeat traumatic experiences. Well, that right there is part of genetic research that talks about trauma fuels evolution. That goes along with the generational cycles. Remember, that's a business science, where we have a generational placement of a traumatic global event or war, or in a larger ring, extinction. And we have these 100-year cycles, these 7,000-year cycles, these 70,000-year cycles. We have cycles of 10 and cycles of 4 and cycles of 6. It says it also I'll keep reading, and then I'm going to go back and talk about, because I think they talk about this later in this same video. It also underlines an explicable desire for pain, or an irrational tendency to undermine one's well-being. So this is that that masochistic versus the self-inflict, or the I can't think of the word, where it's outward, where you're the person, the master, I guess. One likes receiving the pain and one likes giving the pain. This is a codependent relationship, is what it is. This is the relationship we have with our government. At the root of all of this, there is a longing to return to the inorganic state we all come from, which is death. And this is why I like this, because this is kind of a lot of some of what I think might be going on. The death drive is undoubtedly one of the most confusing concepts I've delved into. There has been various interpretations and explanations of the death drive, reshaped and expanded by thinkers like Jacques Lacan and Slavoj Žižek. Even though I tried my best to acknowledge that my exploration is limited, especially regarding later interpretations. However, my focus leans less on psychoanalysis facets and more on the existential questions the death drive evokes. And I didn't write this. Somebody else wrote it, a chatbot, I believe, but another person. I'm just reading it. Why would living entities harbor a wish for self-destruction or even death? And if we look closer at our sufferings of existence, isn't this longing to revert to an inorganic state quite understandable? And this video explores the self-destructive tendencies in light of Freud's death drive and death itself. A little warning. This video isn't very cheerful. So if anyone in the chat is struggling mentally, consider not watching it. Although the purpose of this video is simply to explore Freud's concept and reflect on death. And it's not intended to be helpful or anything like that. Thank you. So here's our, we had our disclaimer. Um, oh no, I have a mental illness. I can't watch this and learn from it. I must go talk to my doctor immediately. I'm having suicidal tendencies and I want to coke. In the wake of World War I, now remember so let me stop here just for a second. We're going to do a refresher. So in the meaning of life, it is my belief that our human development parallels with our world history epochs or eons or ages and stages of development on not only a physical plane, but also on an unconscious plane or in a much larger ring of the onion. And whatever that flavor Kool-Aid is for you, I could care not. It doesn't matter if it's cross-shaped or if it's triangle-shaped. Okay, particle man. Doing the things the particle can. What's he like? It's not important. So this is where I think we are. So I've taken the time to do my best. I have to zoom in. If anyone, like scrolling at the bottom, if anyone would like to help me and redo some of my visuals to make them easier to see, that would be super rad. But I'm going through these stages, and I have, just off of a quick Google and search, I have put together this nice little timeline that shows us that currently we are in our school age to adolescent years. We are turning 12 to 13. We're having a rite of passage. And on a much larger scale, that would be our age of Aquarius, which actually is adolescence or the water boys. So what are the aqua winky dinkies? Anyway, I digress. So that's what's happening on a much larger scale. And so I'm taking these older ideas of philosophy and I'm showing you how they fit a developmental cycle and how we can grow out of them. And this goes into why people can't, they got to realize that there's a glitch in that game that's preventing you from getting out. So you have to put down that game. It's time to grow up and skip some stages. We're gonna maybe to the front of the class. Okay. So this is what I'm at now. So when we're talking about ages and stages, keep this in mind. When we're talking Freud, we're talking in this, he is of this area. He is a school-aged child. So unconsciously, in a larger realm, he's thinking like a school-aged child, okay? Or an adolescent child in a school-aged world, let's just say, right? So he's thinking differently. And so that's why we have these thoughts, okay? So think of when World War I was, and then how old we would have been roughly around that area, okay? So you've got that huge epoch. So, this comes on, right around these timelines we get these wars. I mean, we're talking over here, we're talking thousands of years or, eons, right? But over here, it's just a few years, okay? So in the wake of World War I, humanity faced unprecedented devastation amidst this backdrop. So Sigmund Freud observed his young grandson playing a curious game. The boy would repeatedly throw a toy out of sight and say fort, which is German for gone, and then retrieve it and say da, which is German for there. What seemed to be simple, meaningless child play, Freud saw as a profound but mysterious phenomenon, a tendency to replicate and repeat undesirable, possibly traumatic events, such as loss. In the case of the boy, the game would have been triggered by the temporary absence of his mother during which he played that game. Before the war. Okay, so let me explain what he did there. Okay, so he's talking about his young grandson. Now, I don't know. I wish he'd have said how old the grandson is because that's very important. But I'm going to guess because I know some things. So he says he's young and he would throw a toy out of sight, gone, and go and get it and say, there it is. Here it is. Okay, so to have simple words like fort and da, then I'm going to assume he was, and the ability to go get it. I'm going to assume he was probably in the toddler stage to about 2 or, something around there. Okay. That toddling stage where we're really trying to get control of our bodies, and we're just kind of, we're throwing things. That's why they're so dangerous. They throw things, and they are mastering a concept called hide and seek, or learning that the visual is still there even when you can't see it. So there's a mental process that is going on. So what Freud may have misinterpreted, remember how old he is now, where he's at. That doesn't mean he's an expert. It means that he's giving his idea, a thought about what he is observing, much the same as how I did when my daughter said big truck at the window. And I thought, holy shit, I get what she's saying. So it's these ideas. And so he recognized a normal human behavior, or an unlocking of the brain, where it's understanding concepts of hide and seek, or it can go away from sight and return to me, or a boomerang effect, a self-soothing effect happening in a toddler stage, where separation from mother is taking place in a natural plane, where they're moving further and further away and can be left on their own a longer distance without mother around. It's called detachment, and it's a developmental stage that we go through. And it's a long stage. It's not an overnight stage. It happens over several stages of our development. It's not just an infant, it's infant, baby, toddler, preschooler, and then eventually school age at 6, where we're getting left at a school or a separate location very far away. Bye. And so that is the official breaking of the bond between the mother and the child. And that's why it's used in when we give away our babies to, schools, or to, recruitments, and why these ages are so 5-year-old, and they all have the teachers and the kindergarten classes and the moms at the having breakfast. We're all crying. Oh, it's the first day of school, right? And then some of us are cheering, and it's all there because it's a normal separation. And this continues as we separate through our adolescence, and we begin to challenge the authority of that separation, which means that up until this point of double digits, my mom and dad held all knowledge. I came from them. I looked to them. They held all knowledge. No, I hit double digits. And as string theory states, I move outside of the realm of my perimeter, my boundary, and I move into another ring of consciousness thought, or the ability to think outside that ring. And I come to realize that there's other people and other families with other ideas. And then I learn from them. And then I come home and I challenge my parents, or maybe I challenge my teacher in my double digits. I challenge that authority figure. Could be a bully, whatever flavor Kool-Aid it is, but it's there. But we all start to challenge our parents. We all start to challenge our teachers. I learned this. We all want to outsmart somebody. We all have, that's why we're called smarty pants, and we're told, you think you know everything. And we come in and we tell our parents how it is. And so think of the whole hippie movement in general. I mean, what an absolute generational stab of trauma to the family unit. We're talking baby boomers. We're talking when they were kids, not when they were having kids. So we're talking, the hippies and the flower kids and the Vietnam War and these kinds of concepts. It'll be the same no matter what country you're in. You're going to have the same exact kind of stab in your enlightenment movement. But we had this generation that came home and started educating their parents. You don't understand, Dad. And, he's just fucking trying to keep a job and, keep a family together. And consumerism is at the peak. And, you had these absolutely, and you had that same exact movement of child knowing more, child being more aware when we had the millennial movement, where the millennials now knew more about computers than any of the other generations. It was as if they had, like Gen Zers, as if they had been born with the gift. It was just an interesting, that's all statistically viewpoints from the age of business and generational studies. That's why I find that stuff so interesting that it's there, because that's where I learn it from. I don't learn it from other places. So this developmental stage for us is that happening. So what he does now is what seemed to be simple, meaningless child play, he saw as a profound mystery, a phenomenon. The human tendency to replicate and repeat undesirable, possibly traumatic events, such as loss. So that is exactly what hide and seek is. It's coming to terms with, in that developmental stage, the idea that what is gone is not always gone, that it may still be there even if you can't see it. And then that's where you're going to get your, box things coming out of these types of things, Schroeder's box, the cat in the box, and these ideas, right? It's just a more mature concept of that same. So in the case of the boy, the game would have been triggered by the temporary absence of his mother. But I'm not sure that that's what's linked to war. So that's why I think that this article has really confused it. Because was his mom gone because of the war, or was she just gone because she was being a mother, and mothers have to walk away from their toddling sons, or more, the toddling sons walk away from the mother? I don't know. It was Freud and they had lots of money, so who the fuck knows, right? But the point is that it may have been misconstrued by Freud as just a normal developmental stage that happens in every child, regardless of the environment or the war that was taking place. That's what I was trying to get at. Before the war, Freud developed an idea that he called the pleasure principle, a Lustprinzip in German, which is the instinctive seeking of pleasure and avoiding pain. Though he had previously suggested that humans predominantly seek pleasure and avoid pain, his grandson's game showed another dimension to human motivation. This curious human drive became all too apparent for Freud, observing the intense trauma caused by the war, including his son, especially after losing his daughter. Okay. Freud observed how war veterans repeatedly relived traumatic battlefield experiences in their dreams. He also saw his patients continually find themselves in the same destructive relationships or situations again and again. Thus, he became to believe that humans harbor an intrinsic drive towards self-destruction and ultimately death. And how else could we explain these irrational tendencies to self-harm and self-annihilate? Before diving further into the death drive, let's look at what this phenomenon drives us towards. The inorganic state, or the great nothingness, death. That's it, right? That's the nothing and the never-ending story. You cease to exist. That's the ego death, where there is nothing of you left. In the fear of annihilation, which is our first fear, that's the fear of just never existing at all. I was here in a blink of an eye and I was gone. That's why it's our earliest fear to conquer, the fear of annihilation. Our first stage of development, no matter what our species is, from plant to animal, is, being eaten or not making it, to the next stage of development where we have the ability to fend for ourselves and to get away, right? And that comes our next fear. So that's, you don't even know you exist yet, let alone the world exists. But the fear of an ego death is that not only does your physical self exist, but nothing of you exists. And so it's a mirror of an annihilation. And so you exist never. You never existed. You existed, but never existed at the same time. And that's why kings and queens and rich people like to put their graven images and engraving their name and putting their name and their symbols and doing their things and making statues and making idols, because they want to live on longer than their physical selves, regardless of what that looks like. Now, they'll let you think that it means that they're demons and that they live forever, and they'll let you believe that they're, monsters because that helps them. I mean, honestly, I don't give a fuck. I'm the Wolfman, for fuck's sakes. I live on forever, regardless of how you tell that story. I'm Little Red Riding Hood. You all know me. So, I'm Nefertiti. You all know me. I'm the Sphinx. You all know me. Everyone fucking knows me. So it's these ideas. Okay. So they have what the devil says is the devil doesn't want to die. He doesn't ever want to have to face his, whatever they say. I'm not sure. His creator, God, I don't know. He's here and he can live on forever, or at least infamously. If he can get enough people to repeat it, it becomes a pattern, and a pattern becomes a tradition, and a tradition can't be broken. The general preference for life and aversion towards a death seems to be the norm in most cultures, especially in the West. But what's so wrong with death, which is not just a natural occurrence, but also a cessation of life's many sufferings? It's over. You don't have to hurt anymore. And that's why we say these things. He was not in pain anymore. He's in a better place. It's the eternal calm, the escape from existence towards the perfect, flawless state of inorganic stillness. It's the return from where we came. Death is usually considered something to be feared, something ill-favored or undesirable. It's the antagonist of the thing most cherished, the state that which we wish to maintain and even expand if we get a chance. Life. The wish to live seems natural to us and other living beings. We just have to observe our daily efforts to obtain food and water, acquire protection, and, as far as humans are concerned, arrange our circumstances to facilitate our future survival. Not obtaining such things would endanger our lives in human society. It's also to be expected that when we are sick, we visit a doctor for a cure. When we are struck by life-threatening diseases, such as cancer, we try to beat these illnesses. Longevity is the holy grail. Early death is a tragedy. Aside from preserving and lengthening life, we generally seek to create it. We pass our genes and continue our species, a phenomenon any living organism has the propensity for. And that's the bloodlines where you have, I don't want to mix my DNA, my actual code. So you have a code. Their code is set. They've got a specific code. And if you're not in that book, well, however they talk about it, you're not getting in. You got to have the right DNA to get in, good or bad. It's I was just watching a thing about plasma donations. I'm really wanting to share it. It's a great documentary, and I think it's totally worth watching and watching together. I mean, it just blows your mind. And then, of course, it says longevity is the holy grail. The early death is the tragedy. So we want to live forever is what they're saying, is that it seems to be that we've decided that life and living actually means forever in this physical form. That's what he's suggesting there. And so living longer here, we have a beautiful time to observe this. Now, see, I kind of believe that because this is the only time we can observe that we can only be physical. These two things mix. It's almost like this is the point in a static where these two things touch and create this specific vibration that causes some sort of combining of the two for a minute in time, and we can be this experience, and then we separate again, where I think we get the concept for that spark, and I also see it in some other ways, but it's just a symbolism that comes to my mind, years ago, when I started having like these thoughts in my head, and I started just kind of drawing them and thinking about them and researching them. And what does that mean? And I think that's, that frequency, just it touches for just a hair of a second, and within that lightning strike, within that tiny pew of a second, there's this life, but within it feels bigger. Time is expanded, and so this goes then to lead itself into what we understand as galaxies, and the concept of the galaxies within the mind, as the two parts come together and form these connections, and larger groupings, and how the brain starts to memory fail and combine things and recreate things, and hang on to things and not let go of things, and then make things supernatural, because that's exactly what ends up happening, and ritualistic. And once it becomes a ritualistic, it becomes a habit. It becomes a behavior of yours. So doing the sign of the cross literally became a behavior of you. And you passed it down through generation to generation to generation. And then, even still now, it's still used as a symbol, of, oh my God, oh. So it had that power to it. It's amazing. Anyway, let me see if anybody's saying anything interesting real quick. As I get side thought. Food when you're drunk. Food. That's funny. Definitely war games without frontiers. Baby plasma. Did you know that I also did some research recently? A thought popped in my head as I was thinking about things like this when we're separating from our mommies. Why do we have so many allergies? Breast milk. And you can buy breast milk now in China. I don't know where they're getting this breast milk from. No, you can also find it from animals on the pack, but you can find human as well. So I'm just asking questions. Let's see. That was ridiculous. Invented the Gatling gun so that the bodies to run in straight line for how long you can count. Yes, give me a second. Okay. Hello, William. And you're neck deep in crop production methods. Oh, excellent. I bet that's a fun one. Oi, oi. Well. Back again. I can't do it as good. You look's not bad. Just when you said plasma, I was thinking about a film, Luce the Blue. Is it Lucy the Blue Powder? Oh, Lucy. And she ate was from a baby's. Right, wasn't that? Oh man. I'm gonna find that. I'm gonna find it and share it with you. That I'll tag it in a share or something. I'll tag in it. Yeah. Okay, I got a copyright strike. Did I? I hope not. That would suck. No, everybody's still here. Okay. I must have misread that. All right. Okay, I'm coming back over here. So that's what they're trying to say there. So we pass on our genes. At some point, though, a human mind came up with the idea that life is to be cherished. Just at some point, the human mind decided life should be cherished. It is a gift and a miracle to be alive, a privilege, some attribute to God. But when we look at life honestly, it's difficult to deny the inherent suffering that comes with it. Different thinkers have pointed at this suffering, although they all come to different conclusions regarding solving it. Thousands of years ago, for example, a prince who eventually carried out the name of Buddha walked the earth and acknowledged that suffering lies at the core of being alive. He presented a solution to the suffering of sentient beings, which would lead to enlightenment, which is the end of suffering and the escape of from the cycle of rebirth. And so I'm going to stop right here because this is reincarnation, right? So let's just talk about what Buddha, because we're going to say Buddha and Jesus. Some scholars believe they're one and the same. Some scholars believe that they were, two separate people and they met. Some scholars say, of course, it's a fable to explain, no different than, King Arthur. So let's just take these two in comparison. Well, in Buddha's case, Buddha was the son of an emperor. So he lived a very posh life and was told not. This is my understanding. So if somebody says that's wrong, that's fair. You can correct me. This is just from what I do know. Okay. Because every day they change what we found a new scroll of some type. Okay. All right. Contradicts each other. But here goes. So Buddha was always pampered, and he was told not to leave the walls of the kingdom. And as a young boy, he wandered out like any young boy would. He wanted to escape the walls, and he had the ability to do this. And when walking around, he noticed. So it's the typical story we see in all the Disney fairy tales, where the young prince or the young princess leaves the walls and dresses up and pretends to be a pauper for a day so they can fit in with society and fall in love. I don't know. It's Bollywood, but the genie, what's the Shazam, but Jasmine, I think, is the Disney, but it's this idea. So he sees and he gets to be part of the common man, and he sees their suffering, and then he goes back and then tells them how to relieve their suffering. Okay. I mean, just in that story itself, you start to go, when you state it in such a way, which is a fairy tale version of it. It's like the Three Little Pigs watered down, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, a version of what happened there. And then we have a whole, and then all the poor people say, "Oh, thank you, Buddha, you wise king, emperor, for saving us with these new rules of how I should live. And how, suffering is good for me. Here's some more, presents and and worship, have food and flowers and candles and incense and all that. Yay. And then I have Jesus over here, who was, born in poverty, raised to see conflict, consistently lived, a blessed life amongst those that were impoverished, seemingly, getting by life unscathed, although he was a blabbermouth. In that case, I guess I'm Jesus, if we're going to use that as a scenario. But you get it, that to the ultimate sacrifice, which that's where we have another religion that popped up and said, here's how you should live. Despite all your suffering, you should just say Jesus loves you and you'll be all right. It'll be okay. So you have these absolutely totally different concepts of belief systems coming out roughly around the same time, or at least hijacked roughly around the same time. I'm not sure, if some of the texts are I just know if I wanted to sell myself as a great king, I would definitely fucking make sure that books like the Bible and shit would have my shit in it. So I would make extra sure that all my kings and my lineage would live on forever. That's what I know I would do. And I would call it the book, the one, the only book. You can't even burn them. They're like flags. It's sacrilegious to even think of using it in any other way than with sacred holiness. Oh, like it's some book of Satan or something. And you got to carry it. So bizarre what we do to ourselves. But okay. So these two conflicting go on here. So it's difficult to deny that inherent suffering comes with it. Different thinkers have pointed out suffering, although they all come to different conclusions regarding solving it. And thousands of years ago, for example, a prince who eventually carried the name Buddha walked the earth and acknowledged his suffering lies at the core of being alive. He presented the solution to suffering to the sentient world. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Are you playing in the background? I don't want you doing that. Don't do that. I must have clicked something. I'm so sorry. Okay. But much later in the 20th century lived a highly pessimistic Romanian philosopher named Emil. I don't know how to say his last name, but I looked him up, so we'll talk about him. Who experienced life as unbearable, not something to be enjoyed or lived to the fullest, but as a catastrophe to be endured. So this is where we're going to get the movement of not having children. So the annihilation movement, the Gen X or the Extinction Rebellion, or the global warming or the New World Order, you know, Bill Gates' depopulation agenda, right? And Peter Thiel of, longevity, all linked to business. And business is what? Generational influence over the cycles of a human species on a developmental level. Let's see. In his work, Trouble with Being Born. Anyway, I want to get these books. I'm thinking. I want to find them. I might want to try to find these. So if you're interested in it, we should Google them, or not Google them, but see if they're audiobooks on YouTube. The Trouble with Being Born. I'm sure they are because they love themselves. He criticized the fact humanity in general considered birth as the, quote, sovereign good and death as the misfortune that comes to the end. But he saw birth as the real evil and death the mere ending of it. He stated, quote, if death is as horrible as is claimed, how is it that after the passage of a certain period of time, we consider happy any being, friend, or enemy who has ceased to live, end quote. Now, we can't exclude Arthur. So let's just talk about this guy for a second. So I'm going to go over here. Right, Emil. Okay, so we're going to go over here. And I'm going to read this. Okay. So who was he? 1911 to 1995. So think of his age and how old he was when certain events were taking place. Was a Romanian philosopher and essayist, known for his profound, and this is, who else was a philosopher and essayist? Thomas Paine. Known for his profound and often pessimistic reflections on human existence, life's absurdity, and the nature of despair, his writing is characterized by its intense and somber tone, exploring themes of nihilism, existentialism, and the futility of human life. He was born in Romania and studied philosophy at Budapest. He gained attention with his first major work, Oh, the Heights of Despair, in 1934. Think of his confirmation bias, a collection of aphoristic philosophical reflections that set the tone for much of his later writing. He later moved to France and ultimately became a French citizen, and his works were written primarily in French. His subsequent works, such as, quote, The Trouble with Being Born, 1973, A Short History of Decay, 1949, and The Temptation to Exist, 1956, continue to explore themes of the human condition, the nature of existence, and the inherent absurdity of life. He often is confronted the darkness of existence, the limitations of human understanding, and the pointlessness of existence itself. His writing is characterized by an intense exploration of the human psyche, his sharp and sometimes cynical aphorisms, and the relentless questioning of human purpose and the meaning of life. The meaning of life. His style is philosophical, yet deeply personal, reflecting a deeply troubled and delusioned perspective on the human condition. Well, why wouldn't it be? Look at where his placement in time was. Of course, he had a confirmation bias based off of his own experiences, and he was looking for justification to make those experiences stick. That's what every scientist does. And like a good scientist, he also did that. But any good scientist knows you can't stay there, and it doesn't sound like he does. It sounds like maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he's just throwing it out there. Though often seen as a pessimistic, his work also offers a compelling examination of the human experience. He delves into the depths of despair. Hang on. Excellent. Excellent answers there. Great discussion. The Great Depression was during the silent era. The resurrectionism. I love these. Reincarnation. Coronation. A coronation. Isn't that reincarnation? Coronation. Do you know something interesting about the flower, the carnation? Did you know that you can take a carnation and cut it? They do these in schools all the time to show how the veins of a plant work. But you can take a white carnation and turn it any color you want by coloring with dye, even if it's a vegetable dye. It can be, from a plant or from a bottle. And you can watch the flower change color. You can add dye to the soil itself and create. You can spray paint them too, which is what most florists do. But it is a science experiment in schools to learn about the way, an early example of how plants work before you get into the dissectable part. So it's going to be something usually done around, I would say, 9 years old, somewhere around the 3rd grade type curriculum. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's where I believe that would show up as. So I find that kind of an interesting thing. Anyway, with the coronation, 9, 3rd grade. You get what I mean. Okay. So I'm going back to, yes, we totally see it, don't we? Because we've gotten older, we've learned more about our own selves. And so we see what his perspective is. That doesn't mean his perspective is wrong, though. It just means that we have to look at it with a critical eye. And we also have to keep in mind the other aspect. And together, that's where we find the true meaning of the story. By combining all of the stories together and then pulling out the parts that are the same. Pulling out the things that are the same. And that's how we find what the real meaning is to life. So that's what we're doing. So, fuck. Okay. Anytime I speak German. Okay. Okay, his philosophy, stance, and style has garnered both admiration and criticism. Some see his work as an exploration of the complexities of human consciousness and the inherent contradictions within existence, while others critique it for its extreme pessimism and its lack of hope or constructive resolution. Overall, Emir remains a significant figure in existentialist and nihilistic philosophies. Do you know anybody that has these philosophies? Known for his unique and intense examination of the darker aspects of the human existence. Can I tell you one? Whoever put up the Georgia Guidestones, whoever is into longevity research, Bill Gates, and Yuri Noah, they're into nihilistic philosophies. It might be called the opposite of that, but that's what they're into. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my video. So now we understand what this philosopher's idea is. So it goes on to say, in his work, In the Trouble with Being Born, he criticized the fact that humanity in general considers birth as a sovereign good and death as the misfortune that comes to the end. You can see my chat bot there doing a great job. Saw the birth as real evil and death as the mere ending of it. And he states that if death is as horrible as it claims, then why would we have a happy enemy, a friend, enemy, who has ceased to live, end quote. I said that. Okay. All right. So now we can't exclude Arthur. Now, I didn't look this one up. From his essay, The 19th Century Philosopher claimed that life's suffering far outweighs its pleasures and that we're better off not existing. A claim embraced by the anti-nihilist philosopher David Bentar, and I did look him up, who explains in his book, Better Never to Have Been, that coming into existence, better never to have been, that coming into existence accompanies serious harm, so much so that it's immoral to give birth to new things. So you see where that idea of extinct rebellion or the Gen X or the end of human species or transhumanism, the business and pharmaceutical that is now saying that the human beings are now transforming into a new species, and the X generation is the last to be classified as humans. And so now the new classification begins. And through this new classification, we'll see who the Darwin Award winners are. Who can survive this next, war. It's not about it's about survival of the fittest in another way. It's still about survival of who has the fittest bank account, but that's always going to be the case. But even those with a significant bank account have been fooled in this war into participating. And that brings me to biblical scriptures that say things like the rich and the poor also are treated equal. Because a lot of middle class, which that's also another Forbes article, the attack on the middle class, the separation of classes, that's all falling under the business category. And therefore it sits right there in generational studies, where the gap, or what we would call the Illuminati invisible part you don't see, is being stretched. So that capstone is being lifted above. And so this all goes with them pushing themselves further back through barriers and barricades and laws and surveillance. Underground bunker idea. They are so far from you that they are now a new kingdom in itself. So you cannot even get in these walls at all. You're a new, king has arisen, unless he have a pass and a tag on your pocket. You're not getting in. You have to be on St. Peter's book, the guy in the white lab coat is what I'm saying. And you don't know if you're going to heaven or hell. We don't really know yet until we look at the book and we hook you up to this little machine. That's even just a sci-fi idea. I don't even think it was going to work like that. I don't even think it, I think that that's what we don't recognize is that invisibleness is already here. They have absolutely separated themselves. They are in their underground bunkers on Moon. You are seeing body doubles and face masks. You are seeing CGI and slits in their eyes and aliens. You are seeing the devil. You are seeing the shape shifting because they want you to see that. They're needing you to believe in something supernatural so that you fail to believe in yourself. They need you to see them as more powerful than you. And it doesn't matter if they are. It's just you believe they are. And I'll give you an example in warfare. I know of stories of, say, Aborigines or tribes or, Native Americans is how I know of it. From the old Wild West movies, where they had a way of making themselves look like there was a lot more of them than there really were. And we think that all of our technologies are new. There's no way. We've had whirligigs and kigamajogs and the idea to make puppets for eons. And so there's no doubt that we already knew about these things and we're employing them. So the idea that the human mind just now has come up with this, give me a break. The magicians have grasped on to the concept that you as a child would believe in magic, and they created a superstition for you. They created an idea for you, and everyone buys it as now a fact. Very interesting. So let's look at Benatar over here, because I looked him up too. So here he is. All right, so he's a South African philosopher and ethicist, known for his work on the subject of anti-nihilism, particularly for his advocacy of the view what that is morally wrong. Is it morally wrong to procreate? Born in 1966, look where they were coming out of. Look where they're coming out of. Benatar is a professor of philosophy at the University of Cape Town, South Africa. These are all brethren. And these are the ideas they come up with. I don't know if, there's not a lot of people in here, but I had mentioned another time in a stream a long, long time ago that probably doesn't exist anymore. I had come across some PDF files of military operations about astro projection in the use of military warfare. Okay, it was really about a dream study, and I kind of fell into it. So it wasn't something that I had gone looking for. It just kind of showed up in some other things when I was researching, that I came across these PDFs. They were never classified. They're in somebody's a library. And they were stories they took 100 Marines. I don't even know what they did. Okay. But I'm just, for the sake of this story, they took 100 Marines and they asked them to dream or do a lucid dream state, which is at the time they're calling astral projection, a lucid dream state, and envision a future and a war. And what kind of weapons do you see in this lucid state? So they would get these trained Marines. Remember, confirmation bias, life experiences, their history. Where do Marines come from? Where did they pluck these guys come from? Have you ever met a Marine? I mean, where are they pulled from? So think of their childhood and their life experience. And now they're not only indoctrinated into the Marines, do I need me say more, Top Gun? Then they're put into a room and asked to now envision a world, a future, And in that dream state, think of the type of weapons that are being used from the bad guys. And then they had them all, they wrote down all of their stories. And they gathered all these young Marines stories, their age and their lifestyle, their age and environment, confirmation bias out the fucking ass. And they put them all together, and then they pulled out each and every one of the ones that had the exact same weapon. So if it said like lasers, they pulled the laser. Okay, lasers is in 90% of all of these people's dreams, a form of laser. They were 80s. They were children from the 80s. They're going to have lasers because they fucking watched Kurt. They fucking watched and read comic books of lasers. I mean, remember all of the graphic novels, covers of sci-fi books with lasers shooting out a girl's tits and stuff. This is where they, and this is honest to God. This shit should blow your mind. If this stuff doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what to say. Then they take these ideas and then they give them to the engineers and say, we need lasers. We need these types of weapons. And they drew the weapons, and they all based off of these people's confirmation. And now the military and our tax dollars pay for the weapons that 100 Marines that all had the same upbringing, the same indoctrination have dreamed of. Literally dreamed of. And that's now our reality of what we're living currently in the time that we are today, with military times showing the new weapons coming out to fight the aliens. I mean, get the fuck out of here. And nobody questions these things, and it just blows my mind. So clearly we've got the years. Think of the years. He gained significant attention with his book, Better Never to Have Been, to harm the harm of coming into existence. In his work, he argues that bringing new individuals into existence is a net harm. I wonder if I would like to state that keep your ear open for such things. The fact that this original video is new within, what was it, a few days this month. I mean, that shows you, look how many people have already watched it. Okay, so these are terms that they're getting out there. They want us to know about these terms. That's how the magic works. He prevents a very rational approach towards the end of life and death, carefully comparing the pros and cons of both conditions, leading to the conclusion that it's better not to come into existence. And this is where you get these ideas of the film where people, sacrifice, the Wicker Man kind of idea, or the Running Man, or these types of concepts, the Hunger Games, right? We infrequently contemplate the harms that await any newborn child: pain, disappointment, anxiety, grief, and death. For any given child, we cannot predict what form these harms will take or how severe they will be, but we can be sure that at least some of them will occur. Now, not always. And I can stack the deck in my favor of my genetic code. So myself, just a second. Okay, hello, Dawn, Fourth Wall. How are you? Welcome into my ramblings. That's fair, Dawn. Yes, the space farce. The space farce. Okay. So when the business calls this they have a term for this where they're saying don't have children. There's a movement, probably part of the X movement, what characterizes these branches of thoughts is this: a recognition of a significant degree of suffering in life is more interesting. Mm-hmm. Cereal? Either through the elusive escape from the cycle or the rebirth as a consequence of aesthetic practice, or through not being born in the first place. So when we have our elites, or controllers, whatever they are to you, these people have set themselves up. They have maintained their inheritance. So yes, something might go wrong and something might do that, but the odds are stacked significantly higher in their favor. The house has odds here. And, all the rest of us, we're literally trapped within a 100-year cycle through business generational studies, where they're going to feed us a war every 100 years, or they're going to feed you some type of crisis every 100 years. And then those crises equal mini crisis, and, even larger ones where we have huge anomalies where a whole generation gets skipped, or we have a growing pain, or a transition from one stage of development to the next stage of development. According to Schopenhauer, there's a blind, irrational urge to exist and self-sustain despite life's ingrained misery, which he called the will to live, which is extremely difficult to bypass. We can do as we will, but we can't will as we will, according to Schopenhauer, that guy, which explains why we tend to live in ways that so obviously generate suffering. Consider our insatiable desires for power, social status, and wealth. When satisfied, the feeling of contentment is only temporary, and we're thrown back into the cycle of desire and discontent rather quickly. Thus, our lives become this perpetual chase of satisfying desire after desire, always leading to another want or a need, never bringing lasting fulfillment. And that's even in that movie Time, or with Justin Timberlake, where, you can have 1,000,000 years on your arm, and what else is there to achieve now? What else is there to do? So now, I'll just blow up the planet or something. I'll just do, there isn't a thrill left. This is a thrill-seeking behavior that we do. It's why we up the ante all the time. It's why we become more and more bold with our actions, especially if we're a narcissist or an abuser. We start to feel ourselves puffed up with pride. I think that's like every king's sin. King Herod was so puffed up with pride. He was full of the devil inside. I mean, these ideas aren't there, for no reason. It's also interesting to note that bloating effect, puffing up of self, that happens. The floating frog expression there. Just the symbolisms that come into your mind when you think of such things, But once we, what is there left? What I can't understand is why we are so caught up in trying to be green at the moment that we're completely, we're unaware of the demise, of the actual destruction that is causing a complete disconnect from reality. And that idea that we're chasing somehow unconsciously, we want to die. We want to not exist. We want to fail to be present in the living, even if we're saying something else. And I think that's why religion is so powerful, because it gave you an answer to your afterlife. And I think it's actually cruel, any belief system that throws a rule system on the afterlife, like such reincarnation. So reincarnation to me would be the meaning of life, which just says that I reincarnate into, I become another stage of my developed self. I become an adolescent, or I become a young adult, or I become a preschool. I become a new me with a better understanding of the world moving forward. Let's see. So how liberating is it to be bereft of life when the ongoing dissatisfaction of existence fades as the unbearable bad movie finally ends? In non-existence, there's nothing to worry about. There's that nothing, right? Minor concerns like choosing what to wear or eat, or more pressing issues such as war, poverty, and illness all come to a halt. If death grants us such relief, isn't it something to look forward to then? Here's where Freud's death drive comes into play. And it says a force that opposes the life drive and entails an unconscious desire to escape life's ongoing sufferings. Now, we're talking about being an adolescent right now on a big, huge scale. So our question mark here is, I can predict the future. We're very susceptible to some of these things. These kinds of ideas will work in the favor of the devil because on a much greater unconscious level, we are in fact considering such stuff. And they can use that to their advantage. And I'll remind you, when we were teenagers, we were told to beware of the results of sexual activity. The repercussions. You could get pregnant. You could get an STD. And so they were definitely, pushing something on us. And that's exactly the same now. It's the same idea here. You could, if you continue to live, right, you could suffer, and you could die, bad things could happen to you. So it's best just not to live at all. It's best not to have sex at all, right? So be abstinence, abstain. So it makes sense that this concept here would be very present in the meaning of life, because that is what that is. So we think that I'm never having kids, or we think things like, if I have kids, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to treat them this way, or I'm not going to do that. And it's interesting to note that a lot of Gen Xers, and then since then, so they didn't have as many kids. A lot of course, we're talking about not relationships as well, but the birth rates went down since Gen X. And I think millennials had another spike. They had very high birth rate, but again, millennials are a high birth rate generation. So that was already predicted. So the next generation, or Gen Zs, they're already predicted to have very few children. This is already acting itself out. It's already being expressed on a generational level. And the fact that we have another, environmental factors such as the Lucy juice, that is, predicted to also cause some type of problems with the reproductive, along with the, hormones going into foods and the poisonings and things. I mean, puberty is happening physically and consciously on both levels. You can see why it's here, why these are the thoughts. Besides our conscious attempts to survive and thrive, there's an underlying propensity to return to an inorganic state, to find a zero point, a balance, search for the pattern repeat, search for the 0 point. And now let's take a closer look at Freud's theory. But before I do, I'm going to pop back over here and say hi to the chat. Well, thank you, Dawn. Thank you just for coming in. That's super rad. In a short, oh, no, nobody's going to care. Okay. Let's see. When dreams appear to be more normal than reality, something is wrong. Gen Z airheads. I like this comment. Fourth one. I'm going to leave that there. That's great. Okay. So we've all witnessed in other people, or perhaps even personally experienced, a curious interest in self-destruction. It could be the urge to take copious amounts of intoxicants as a means to tune out, accompanying the risk of poisoning and what potential long-term health consequences. Or what about the inexplicable desire for self-harm, such as picking out a scab or engaging in more violent self-damaging behaviors, such as physical harm? What's the allure of these forms of self-destruction? Could they arise from a mysterious, elusive inner longing for demise? As mentioned, Freud's view on human motivation shifted after he became aware of certain destructive tendencies that he couldn't reconcile with his earlier thinking. It became apparent to him that the total human pursuits could be traced back to survival and pleasure alone. They seem to be a more sinister, darker layer to what drives us. Could it be that besides our inherent will to live, there is also a will to perish? And I think this is good to note here, where the pain and pleasure centers lie in the brain, and why bondage and S&M seems to be on the menu currently, along with our sexual drive or weirdness that we're going through as we go through our puberty and redefine our sexuality. That's what the culture and the generations are doing. But we come to recognize what pain and pleasure means, and these two things are linked together. So whenever and they must be, and the reason for that is because if we didn't, we wouldn't have babies. So the pain along with the pleasure, your body goes into shock, and when your body goes into shock from the amount of pain, then it starts to release all kinds of warm, lovey, goody stuff that makes you feel somewhat high as a kite and in almost a translucent state. This is what a natural birth will do for you, or breaking a bone or some kind of ridiculous fight or flight type. But in this sense, because immediately after you're given a baby, and that's necessary, because then that boosts, it takes advantage of that one bit that's being released through the adrenaline, and that intermixes with the other hormones that cause you to fall in love and be filled with all this stuff. And you have what's called amnesia. They call it mother's amnesia, which means that at that moment you go, oh my God, why did I get pregnant again? I remember this is going to feel, but as soon as it's over, you forget again. And you'll do it again and again and again and again, because all of those hormones come out at the same time, a rebirthing. So there's something connected to those two regions. And when we're having a rite of passage or coming of age moment in our developmental stages, turning 13 and our bar mitzvahs on the table, then that's that going out adrenaline where you kill the wolf, but you almost die in the process. It's the I did it moment that the mother feels when she's delivered that baby, and she's like, I did it, I did it, I did it. She's beautiful, she's perfect, we did it, idea. So makes a lot of sense to why that's all connected in there, in these balance, or 50 shades of gray. It explains why YouTube is so obsessed with pornography and the exploitation of it in whatever form it takes, even in thought fuel, because it gets views. That's truth. It explained why we might consciously and unconsciously prefer death over life. I think I said that. Okay. So so Freud believes that the death drive is a biological drive in living organisms. Now, I would like to say that I think that it has more to do with our desire to move than it does death. So death being linked to movement. If I don't move, I will die. I cannot be stagnant. I cannot be sloth. I must move. That goes to a developmental stage of rolling over, crawling over, walking over, running over, driving over, and so that stage of getting, your autonomy, your full autonomy of your body, that is a life force. That is a death force. The force says, if I don't do this, I'll die. The force says, if you do this, you'll live. So you have both of those being said to you at the same time, a mirroring image of both the life and the death, driving you to do something. And so the human mind is like any but animal at all, any living thing, it's to move. It's to begin to move. A seed must move. It must grow. It must move out of the center. It has to come out. Something comes out and moves. Usually, legs or, tails and things like this. I think that is amazing that the embryo starts out so similar, with the tail being an aquatic form of movement. That's first movement, tails, and such things like that. Arms, buds, flaps, and then a flap becoming a tail. I mean, just the idea of all of that sounds really interesting. I always liked evolution in those terms. So what did he say? He says that if we are to take it as truth, that knows no exception, that everything living dies for internal reasons, become inorganic once again, and then we shall be compelled to say that the aim of all life is death. And looking backwards, that inanimate things existed before living ones. Duh. I think this is very interesting in the idea of cultures that believed in a warrior's death being like the ultimate death. So the martyrdom, or, the Sparta, those kind of myths that come out of such things. It doesn't even matter, it's the glory of, so what is that? Like Norse mythology, Vikings, these kind of Valhalla, these kind of systems that were a lot of natives or Aborigines, I think, have some similar ideas there as well. And so the drive is more simply our journey towards death. So that maybe that's their idea, right? Is that I'm here and I'm living, but ultimately it's to reach, death. So I'm going to make the most of it. I'm not going to ever have been controlled. I'm always going to have been a free person of my free choosing, right? That concept there. Aside from our imminent journey from the cradle to the grave, it is an unconscious longing for demise, or as we could say, the wish for this journey to end sooner and biologically determined. It's the tension that arose by departing from nothingness that tries to cancel itself out, a drive to return to where it came from. So we could look at Icarus's actions not as bravery or youthful recklessness, but as a manifestation of the unconscious death drive to escape from the domain of tension into nothingness. Life inspires more dread than death. It is life, which is the great unknown. I mean, isn't that like recovery, and depression in itself? Is that that unknown of death seems more attractive now based off of what I've been fed than the human condition, unknown death. And so to a very vulnerable mind, that can invoke thoughts and ideas, no doubt. So if I was the devil, I would definitely be using that one. Why not? Why not? Why not introduce nihilism? Why not introduce, don't have children? Why not introduce, Armageddon and stuff, and then sell you tickets to my concerts and to my conventions and to my stocks and bonds, to my bunkers, and to my, you know what I mean, to my books and my enlightenment, and to my yoga parties in the desert, and my sex parties. You want some of those too? You know, I would totally do these things. Why wouldn't I? It's not my fault people fall for it. Jeez Louise. But who reads these? Do you see what I'm saying? This is what I'm thinking. I'm not even qualified to make these thoughts, but I'm thinking them anyway. And that's what they do. That's what they do. They pay people to sit and think of these thoughts. Sit and think about Freud's death drive and tell me what it makes you think of. How can I use that to my... Now, I'm going to show you how much that's true. So in case you're questioning me of what businesses do, and then I'm going to take questions. Hello, James Patrick. Welcome in. It's good to see you guys. Paul, hello. Because I'm getting close to 2 hours, but I hope my point has been made. So, or at least you've enjoyed listening to me blabber. So let's just talk about how much they research us. So I'm predicting, Joanie Rotten makes a prediction. We're going to suddenly have a lot more stuff coming out about some doctors you've never heard of, some philosophers, and Freud is going to make a comeback. He's going to make a Freudian slip into the future, and we're going to be talking about the death drive, and somebody's going to be using it in correlation to enlightenment. And then the reincarnation and enlightenment. Do you know how hard it was? That's all intertwined here. Do you know who reads the books of Freud? Businesses do. Why is that? Do you see what I am saying? This is so interesting. Okay, so I ask myself, do they? Yes, they do. So here's the proof. Oxford academic. Risk-taking differences across the adult lifespan. This is what he was reading about the death drive, okay? So here's one. I'm just going to show you what they do. So they have an idea. Older adults face the important risk decisions about their health, their financial future, and their social environment. We examine age differences and risk-taking behaviors in multiple risk domains across the adult lifespan. They want to know. So here's their method. The cross-section study was conducted in which 528 participants from 18 to 93 years of age completed the domain-specific risk testing, or DOSPERT scale. They actually have a scale so that anybody can use it for their research, and then they'll sell you the research. I'm going to show you how these statistics work. It's kind of a fun magic. So a survey measuring risk-taking in 5 different domains, and it gives you the results. So they did. And then they really just want, we discuss possible underlying causes of the domain-specific nature of risk-taking in an age. So there's one. The ethical risk-taking reduces relatively smoothly. So there's one. That one did that. That talked about that. It was from 2014. It's from Oxford Academic. That's a business school. Okay. Science a Daily. It also has one from 2011. That was 2014. There was also a study in 2011 about your risk-taking behavior rising until age 50. And that up until age 50, people do, not everybody, but the human beings in general, some are still willing to take a risk. Now, how did they do this test? This was from the University of Oregon. If you are under the age of 50, you're probably not reached your competitive peak. Not yet anyway, and this is why we end up with revolutions. And what is the generation? The middle-aged human beings that seem to. But here's what they did. So this should scare you. The project began as a part of a required educational component of a stimulus grant from the National Institutes of Health, National Institutes of Aging. Under the guidance of the UO researchers, the students uncovered uncharted territory. So the Martyr Harburg team mined the data more in depth. In a paper appearing online ahead of publication in the journal Psychology and Aging, the researchers report that the willingness to enter the competition to achieve a bigger payoff continues to rise for all adults. Men slightly more than women. In other words, how willing are they to go all in or, take that spin, no whammy, or gamble? Until they know the age, they already knew people will gamble. Look at the age of the people that are gambling. The results were drawn from 543 of the adults in the study who were aged 25 to 75, and the 281 men and 262 women were relatively well balanced across age brackets of 25 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and 66 to 74. Competitions are really important as people go after resources, political positioning, college admission, jobs, and the likes, they said. How well you perform in them determines your success. Maybe it's all about the choices people make. The results of our study were striking and novel. They expected it to start going down as you were heading towards 50, but it seems like that's not the case. Up until 50, you could still take risks. But here's the study. So they go down to tell you the participants have been given a choice to complete a short mathematics exercise and receive a small amount of cash. So here you can get $20 if you do this quick mathematics exercise. Easy for you to do. Or for the correct answers, so the more answers they got right, they'd get small cash in a non-competitive work, or the potential larger payoffs if they were outperformed others in the task. So if you do better than anyone else, you'll get more money. And they found that people have continued to take that risk up to about 50 years of age. A lot of people are willing to still go for that larger chunk, thinking that they can be, their egos present is one of the other things that comes from this study. And they think that they can they can get a high grade in simple math. So Forbes also, so let's keep going because that was in Science Daily. We also have good therapy. When do teenagers stop taking risk? At age 18 and ending at the age of, do you have a guess? This is a very interesting article as well. This is at goodtherapy.com. So it says, the Department of Clinical Psychology and Psychotherapy at the University of Bern in Switzerland recently led a study examining a risk-taking trajectories of participants beginning at age 16 and ending at age 29. He looked at alcohol and cannabis use, smoking, drinking, and drunkenness, HIV risk through unprotected sex, and general deviance as a sample of 2,843 participants. I wonder who bought this study. And sometimes you can find out. So that's always interesting. But that was from 2013, totally different study. 2022, we get another one that comes out of risky behavior in preteens and teenagers. In the Huffington Post, how from 2016, how risk-taking changes as you get older. And of course, Forbes chimes in. And Yale, and the National Institutes of Health, and HealthLink, and another National Institutes of Health. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Boston University has a go at it. This is what they do. This is how Max Placco Glycocraft. what could they possibly be? Who is taking an interest in our behaviors? And who knows more about these people than we do? So we're just getting caught up. Okay, I'll stop now. I won't keep going. I've probably bored a lot of people and interested others. Hello, SD. Welcome back. Let's see. I believe we are more alive after we die, if that makes sense. I would say so too, because I'm no longer limited by my 5 senses. But then would that make you raw? You know, there's also those films, Fourth Wall, where they have you like people who can have all senses, all their senses at once, you know. That kind of stuff. And then, you know, they can hear, everything's super, they get the sixth sense, they can read minds, you know, but then I don't know, I've lived with whatever, you know. I'm sure, but I don't think people really do realize how much they research us and analyze us. And these ideas are just coming to the surface. Peter Thiel's just now showing up in the truther community's mouths and the anti-community's mouths. And the fact, and I'm not saying anything against them, it's not their fault. It's just that they're so caught on symbolisms and checkerboards that they're failing to miss the bigger picture here. And they're dismissive of generations, and they're dismissive of our know thyself, all the know thyselves that are dismissive of their own developmental stages of self knowing. It blows my mind. So, you know, I'll just keep at it. But, you know, we learned it here together first, because I've always just shared what I've thought in hopes of nothing more than making someone think something else than what we've been told. And it's just blowing my mind. So many people want to believe in the boogeyman or Santa Claus or a savior or Jesus or Armageddon or a war. I don't know. You name it. That they're desperately marching towards it with, you know, death as that we were discussing. You know, the you know, what is it called again? I forgot. The self-destructive death drive. It seems as if there is this unconscious part of us that wants to end it all, even those who want it to remain. Because the very interesting thing is the people who want it to remain seemingly are the biggest culprits of destroying it. I mean, our global leaders say they want to live forever, but they certainly aren't acting like it. Because even if they wanted to poison us, why would they want to live underground? Why would they want to even go someplace that isn't the beauty that's here? They could have, at any point, they could wipe off whoever they don't want and still stay out here on top of the planet. They could have done that anytime they wanted. They never wanted to. They never wanted to save the planet. And ever have they ever had any intent to save the planet. Every bit of all of the movements from Greenpeace to the Peace Corps to Doctors Without Borders, every one of them is an anti-human existence organization, the opposite of what they say. They're all controlled by businesses. They're all funded and given jobs, and they row out on boats with signs every 30 years and ask me to save a fucking whale. And they have done nothing to save the whales. You know, they just keep encouraging more of it. And through consumerism, we're buying more of it, all because we want to have feed us cells on our faces too, like Sandra Bullock. That's bollocks. That's disgusting. Hello, Mr. BB. Mr. BB's here. Mr. BB's here. Joanie is one of those brats, you. I'm a brat. I'll take that as a compliment. You're damn right I'm a brat, fourth wall. That's it. That's all you do. Hello. It's good to see you guys. Well, anyone's welcome to hop up and chat with me now if you would like to. So I did put the link out, I think. Did I put the link out, I think? Yes. No, I don't know. Here it is anyway. Because I like to hear what other people think. I like to know. In my idea of the meaning of life theory, it seems to me like these theories make sense from both worlds. I can see it both ways, which means that it's really just finding one that doesn't sound silly and recognizing that don't run over there either. One thing I know about the boogeyman is that they might pop out of a bush so that you'll turn around and run right into their net. And that's called being a trapper. Trapper MD. Anyway, you get it in stereo. Aw, that's like the nicest thing anyone has said. I do enjoy my friends. Thank you. And the that's all that matters is when somebody says, I might not know what you're talking about, but it sounds interesting. I take that as a huge compliment. I think that's kind of my magic power or my magic trick or superpower, whatever flavor Kool-Aid you like. My hypnotist act is to just get thinking something different. Tilting your head at the image, looking behind the person to what books are on their shelf. Hello, Vinny. How are you? So it's that, I like to see what symbols does this YouTuber want behind them. Notice that I have picked for today's presentation the control room, because this is where I sit when I'm working through problems. So that kind of brings me to another interesting idea I had this morning. So while listening to my friend Will from That's Life But Not As We Know It, he was doing, another wonderful, we're being lied to about space. And I had some questions. So I decided to go look up what is a spacewalk for grades kindergarten through fourth grade. So that's roughly, like 5 through 8. I mean, 5 through 10. Anytime an astronaut gets out of a vehicle while in space is called a spacewalk. A spacewalk is also called an EVA or an EVA. Stands for extravehicular activity. The first person to go on a spacewalk was Alexei Leonov. He was from Russia. The first spacewalk was on March 18th, 1965. It was 10 minutes long. The first American to go on a spacewalk was Ed White. His spacewalk was on June 3rd, 1965 during the Gemini 4 mission. White's spacewalk lasted 23 minutes. 23! Today, astronauts go on spacewalks outside of the International Space Station. Spacewalks usually last between 5 and 8 hours, depending on the job. The world record for the most spacewalks is held by Russian astronaut Anatoly Soloviev. Han Solo. Anatoly Soloviev. He has been on 16 spacewalks, and those spacewalks equaled more than 82 hours outside in space. That's almost 3.5 days total. The U.S. record for most spacewalks is a 4-way tie. 4 NASA astronauts have made 10 spacewalks each. They are Michael Lopez, Algeria, Peggy Whitson, Bob Benkin, and Chris Cassidy for a CC. Of the 4, Michael spent most of the time outside the space station like a good saint. His total is more than 67 hours. Why do astronauts go on spacewalks, I wonder? Astronauts go on spacewalks for many reasons. Spacewalks lets astronauts work outside their spacecraft while still in space. Astronauts can do science experiments on a spacewalk. Experiments can be placed on the outside of a spacecraft. This lets scientists learn how being in space affects different things. Spacewalks also lets astronauts test new equipment. They can repair satellites or spacecraft that are in space. By going on spacewalks, astronauts can fix things instead of bringing them back to Earth to fix. Okay, so I have some questions here. This is where they stumped me. Okay, this is the one. I need to update my browser. Why is that? Is it giving me problems? Why would I need to do that? I'm not good with computers. James. So they could go out. Okay. So they're going to do a science experiment. I get that. Where they take a petri dish and they, glue it to the side of the spaceship or Velcro it to the side of the spaceship, and they leave it out into space, and then they bring it back inside the capsule or to bring it back to look at the effects that are happening on it. Okay. So why do they have to go outside the spaceship again to have access to these? Why can they not have a type of seal that would push them out, or they could, pull them in like a capsule, like that would, you would push a button and it would just and close in and close off that space behind it. And then you would have, your capsule of your things without having to have the spacemen go on a death walk to retrieve a Velcro petri dish. I'm just wondering. So that's one of my questions. Maybe we should spend some of our tax dollars on that idea, because that sounds like something I've seen in a movie. Surely they could have come up with that by now. And then they say that it allows them to do repairs on the spacecraft itself without having to come back to Earth, without bringing it says fix things without bringing it back to Earth. Things. So can it not bringing back I still don't quite understand. Okay. What's the equipment outside? Why is the equipment outside? Is that what we're told? That the equipment can't be inside that could be repaired? And maybe some of them could be inside. And so you could go, well, Joanie, they do have umbrellas that open up with aluminum foil, like one of them Jiffy Pop oven popcorn things, or just and it just inflates, and you have this silver umbrella of poofiness steaming out the center. Yum. But now I'm thinking about popcorn. But they might have to fix these things, right? So, okay, that's fair. But what about other stuff? Why do they always have to go outside for other stuff? I don't know. Just and okay, so now I have another question then. Excuse me, Professor. Could we not come up with some kind of like, you know how we have these walkways from like one building to another, and we have like inflatable. Could we not have something like that, like an inflatable tube that would suction cup to the side? Like I was watching my aquarium, and there's a little suckerfish, and I thought, we could do that to the spaceship, where all of these things would be in an area that we could have some type of seal that could be met, like it would come off, arm and the seal, and they could seal it and then work within that area. That would be a great idea. That would be safe for spacewalks. Helix out. Oh, I see. Oh, right. No, I don't update. Okay. Anyway, I just had those ideas. So why do they? How do they do it? Breathing oxygen, only oxygen, like tunnel, like people that go underwater, aquanauts and astronauts. I'm just thinking that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Safer stands for simplified air for EVA rescue. They control it with a joystick. Oh, they showed us that in the movies, didn't they? What is he looking at here? What planet is in the horizon of his? Is that Earth? Because I thought Earth was behind him. What's on this planet in his lens there? This is how they train. Anyway, you can go and find out more if you're in K through 4th, and if you're interested, anyway. All right, if nobody wants to come talk, then I'm out too. I mean, I'm just going to blabber about nothing. So, there's that. All right, we'll bounce out. Skate like the asshole don't exist. You know how that goes.
This public service announcement is brought to you by Rotten Studios. Remember, no contact is the road to freedom.